Is Kirby Smart going to have to rebuild Georgia in 2025? What does that mean? They just retool at Georgia. They just plug and play at Georgia. Kirby's bringing in all of these number one classes, these number two classes, these top five classes. He's winning the transfer portal in a way right now. They've got all sorts of talent in Athens. Is it a dumb question? It might end up being a dumb question, but no one, people are probably not going to remember this video a couple years from now. But I think that Georgia might have to rebuild a little bit in 2025. I want you to hear me out. This is not negative thinking. This is really more so positive thinking about what I think can happen for Georgia in 2024. Because I think this team is ridiculous. There are things about this team, and I've discussed this before. There's things about this Georgia team that are reminding me of the 2021 Georgia team. I think there's plenty of age and leadership. I think there's plenty of NFL talent. I think that when I just look around the rest of the country, I don't feel as confident about the other teams the way I do when I look at this Georgia football team. Will Kirby have to rebuild it in 2025? Well, I look at Georgia's offense, and I see NFL in 2025 draft. I see that. And I say, well, this legit offense that we're expecting Georgia is going to have, it's just not going to exist in 2025 because the personnel is going to be so different. You saw, even with Georgia winning again, you saw the talent drop off on defense and the difference. There was a difference. And would the Ohio State game been as close if that 21 defense was there? I think Georgia probably wins that game more decisively. But really, I do. I look at this team and I say, oh, there is a lot of players. Like, they could beat that 15 if Georgia really goes nuts this year. They could beat that 15 draft pick number that they had in the 2022 NFL draft. Let's just start the conversation there. I want to bring up an Alabama example as well, but let's start the conversation there. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about Georgia's personnel. I think it's going to change after this season. I think that rebuild might not be the best way to put it. A harsh retool is totally something in question, though, when you look at this team. On offense, I've got the depth chart pulled up. Beck will go to the NFL. Your quarterback's gone. I think that Trevor Etienne will play his way into the NFL most likely. Truss gone. Ratledge gone. The combination of Fairchild and Morris could be gone. Let's say one of them's gone. Ernest Green's probably gone. I think Dominic Lovett's probably gone. Right there, we're talking about more than half of the offense and a lot of the offensive production. If Dylan Bell has a really good year or Ra Thomas has a really good year, you're probably going to see one or two of those guys go as well at the receiver position. Is Aaron Smith going to have a good year? I think Benjamin Urisek's going to be a big part of Georgia's offense this year too, and he'll be gone after this year most likely. Oscar Delp will have that option. I kind of see him as a 4-year guy. Jared Wilson will have that option. I kind of see him. You got to start for 2 years most likely. So right there, we're talking about like the majority of Georgia's offense gone. Well, what does it look like after that? Well, we don't know, right? But right now you're probably looking at a quarterback battle between Gunnar Stockton and Jaden Rashada, assuming that Ryan Puglisi is not quite there yet. I think Georgia will be fine on the offensive line because they've recruited that so well. They've recruited all these positions really well, so they're going to plug and play. But things will be different, and sometimes it takes a couple of years for things to click. Sometimes it took a while for things to click for Stetson and for him to be able to play at a high level and be a Heisman contender. It took a while for Jaden Daniels to become what he became. I see Georgia's team this year, and I'm like, yeah, that team can probably win. And things are going to change, and I might say the same thing about Georgia next year heading into it. I just think there's going to be a lot of lack of clarity. I think about the Alabama teams from the early time in Nick Saban's run there. 2009, championship. 2010, Cam Newton prevents that. 11 and 12, championship. Then there was a drought. Florida State wins. Alabama didn't make the national championship. Ohio State wins. They didn't make the national championship. The year after, they make the national championship and Clemson wins. So they lose 3 years in a row. We are at that point where we can talk about Georgia in the light of Alabama, because I think that they're just at too high of a level to ignore them on a yearly basis. Georgia's going to be producing championship football contenders year in, year out. 2023 is an example. They don't win, but that was a contender, and that was a team that people really, including myself, really thought, hey, they might not have beaten Alabama, but this is still probably one of the best 2 or 3 teams, if not the best team in college football. How do you not put them in the playoff? Well, things happen. So you can see that after Alabama has so much success in a short period of time, it took them a couple of years to get back to that spot. And I wonder after this, because I think that this from 21 to 24 was this 4-year extreme championship window. Obviously, Georgia winning the first 2 years of that, having a chance last year, and everyone thinking that they have a legitimate chance this year to do that. Are they going to, have to take a break after that? Because will a first-year starter be the guy for Georgia at quarterback? A lot of first-year starters probably at offensive line, a couple first-year starters at wide receiver, probably a first-year starter at running back. We're talking about that on the offensive side of the football, and this is an offensive game. You look at the defense, I don't feel as strongly in that light as I do about the offense, just because I think this offense has a lot of NFL players, and I think this defense does too, but it's not as put together quite yet. And what will it lose this year? What will it lose after this year? It's going to lose Malachi Starks. It's going to lose Michael Williams. It's going to lose Smile Mondon. It's going to lose Chas Chambliss and maybe 1 or 2 of the corners. So it's not going to be quite as bad. You're going to lose Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. They rotate so much on defense, and there's so much talent at some of those spots that has become really exciting for Georgia. I just think the way that they attack defense, you don't worry about the turnover on that side of the ball as much, because it's usually just not going to be as drastic. You saw that. Georgia was still able to have a really good defensive year in 2022, right? I'm just going off the rip off the top of my head. I don't have their schedule pulled up, but they only allowed 3 points to Oregon. 2022, man, now I'm really trying to go off the top of my head. Cold weather game against Kentucky. They shut down Kentucky's offense that had a future NFL quarterback in Will Levis. Shut down Auburn. Shut down a lot of teams, even though they didn't have that. So playing a little bit of devil's advocate, you could say, hey, well, that defense was missing a lot of guys, and they still were really, really good. And you think about Georgia's offense, well, they were missing a few guys from that team, and they were still really, really good the next year. So maybe you can look at it and say that, well, the 2025 defense, even though you're going to have some of those big names like Malachi Starks and Michael Williams, maybe that's going to be a unit that's just really good because of how well that they've recruited and developed at that position. I don't think that you can ignore the fact that things are really going to change for Georgia in that 2025 season. Carson Beck has been kind of groomed for this role for a long time. He's a guy that people thought was going to win this job earlier than he did. He thought he was going to win it earlier than did. He almost did. We're talking about a very different Georgia football story. The week of the UAB game in 2021, when JT Daniels couldn't go and it ended up being Stetson. Well, that week everyone thought it was going to be Carson Beck that was the starter for Georgia. So he waited and was groomed for a long time. He was ready for this position, and that the quarterback position matters a lot, obviously, in football. So I do think that there are different elements to this thing now. The transfer portal. Kirby can go and maybe pluck a couple of names that are going to be impact guys from day one because they've been impact guys at other places. Obviously, there's unforeseen development. I don't know which one of these freshmen really, really will end up being really good. Maybe Joseph Jonah Ajonye is a superstar. Maybe KJ Bolden's a future superstar. Maybe one of these wide receivers is a future superstar. One of the running backs like Nate Frazier or Dwight Phillips Jr. that hasn't even arrived to campus yet. Maybe they end up really taking over their sophomore year in 2025. So futuristic conversation. But I think that the concept of a little bit of rebuilding is probably going to take place for Georgia and for Kirby Smart after this season. That's just how loaded with NFL talent I think that this roster is. Thanks for watching.